Got to introduce you to something else on hockey. Now, Kenya men and women's hockey teams were in South Africa. They were battling for a ticket to the Paris 2024 Olympics. Now, both of them lost at the semi-final stage. And that was the saddest bit of it, that they lost at the semi-final stage. After being beaten by Nigeria 0-1, that's in the women's semi-final at the Pretoria University. Now, Nigeria went ahead to be thumped, especially in the women's match 9-1. So I'm wondering what happened to the Kenyan team at the semi-finals to lose by 1 goal to Nigeria. But that's a story that will be told by the people who are there. In studio today, we have some guests. They also happen to come from the hockey side. There's a coach of the KU hockey team. That's Richard Wandera. It's very good to see you, coach. What do you call the KU team? They usually have nicknames.
Yeah, the men's team is called Vultures.
Vultures?
The men's team.
Vultures.
And the ladies' team.
The universities usually amaze me. They've got terrorists in there. They've got everything that you don't want to be associated with. Like, have you ever seen anybody following a vulture?
The ladies' side have an interesting name.
You do, eh?
Titans.
The Titans?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I know Titans look big for that matter. But it's good to see you here. We'll talk a little bit about universities hockey. I know USIU has a very good hockey team as well. I think they give you a lot of problems when you go into the matches. But they also got the director of young players development at Wazalendo, and this is none other than engineer Moses Majiwa. It's very good to see you as well.
Thank you very much.
The topic is on development of hockey.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, you know, hockey as a conversation has been absent for maybe 3 to 4 years now. We're not hearing about hockey. We don't even know the fixtures. But let's talk about the development. What's happening at Wazalendo that you can say is helping the sport of hockey in this country?
Well, it's interesting. First of all, you talk about fixtures. We do the fixtures.
Do you do the fixtures?
Yeah.
He's the man in charge of the
So you're the one I need to blame then. Are you in charge of fixtures?
Well, it's a union thing, so we do it together.
We always know that in any federation there must be a fixtures secretary.
Yes.
We should be able to tell us what fixtures they are.
I
I will not be happy to tell you that 2 or 3 years ago I literally had to push to get these fixtures.
No, they'll come, don't worry. But let's talk about what's happening at Wazalendo. Wazalendo, ever since it was formed in 1995, we've always had this knack of developing young people to actually play the game. And this has actually come through until, I think, 2018. We had some of our young people being part of the national team at the Africa Youth Games in Algiers, Algeria. And these same youngsters went to play in the Youth Olympic Games in Argentina, Buenos Aires in Argentina, October 2018. So Wazalendo has had this vision of developing, more like a template for what we would call a typical hockey club in Kenya. We have an academy, which to a large extent, we are calling it, it's a social transformation program where we get young kids, most of them from the slums. We train them hockey. We help them get through with their academics. By the time they go to secondary schools, we try and look for secondary schools for them. We negotiate for their fees and so on and so forth. They uplift the sports in those schools. And then when they get to universities, we look for Wandera.
How many players of that kind do you have?
He actually has.
Beneficiary.
Yes.
Oh, you are a direct beneficiary.
Okay.
One player, Ngara, is it?
Ngara,
yes.
Ngara.
So you went from that academy and you went into a hockey scholarship.
You see, okay, he works with the young kids. These kids, when they get to the level of getting to the university, now that's where we come in. So he qualified to join Kenyatta University, and I was happy to get a transfer from his club.
So you have how many?
I have one.
You have one at the moment.
Yeah, but there are so many. Yeah, there are so many in very many.
Now, I actually know one who's on a scholarship, but at another university, not there, but in the ladies category as well. But just how many of those kinds are you churning out in a year, for example? Could they be enough to make up a national team of good players?
Well, Bernard, you see, there's quite a lot which needs to be done. Wazalendo only cannot do everything.
Yeah, you can't.
Because this
Actually, I'll tell you something.
Yes.
This is the first time, this is the only time we're hearing about a hockey academy. Have you ever heard of another hockey academy? Is there any other hockey academy, first of all? So you might be the only hockey academy in the country.
Well, you see, and this is what we actually need for us to be able to develop the sport as a country. Because you need the academies, and you also need the infrastructure. Because you see the kids, if you come to where we are training them, many a times you find we train with the bigger boys. When the big boys come, we move to a grass pitch, which is, bumpy.
Yes.
Now you tell me, if this young kid trains in that bumpy pitch, and then you expect them, when they are fully grown, to play senior, then they play with people who have been playing hockey on Astro ever since they were born, So those are the kind of things. But having a number of academies is one step. Having the surfaces, the infrastructure, the hockey field is the next thing that we also need. And then the capacity, the coaches.
Yeah,
we need a lot of coaches.
But let me ask the coach as well. How difficult is it for your team, for example, that probably plays on a Maram surface?
Yes.
And then you go and play at City Park, the hockey stadium, which is a different kind of stadium. How difficult is it for you as a coach to be able to get your team to play at standards, equal in those two different pitches?
Yeah, for sure, Bernard, it is difficult, especially if you're getting fresh players that have just come from high school. And if you understand the hockey landscape very well, especially when you're talking about the youth, majority of the good players come from the western part of the country.
Even for hockey?
Yes, for hockey.
Yeah.
So in western, there is no Maram. So when they come to Nairobi, for them to play club hockey, okay, we have a few clubs that have come up in those regions, but majority are in Nairobi. So this player is coming to Nairobi, first time on AstroTurf, you will definitely struggle. So it takes time for you to adapt.
Engineer, this is a question, it's probably not related to hockey, but it is related to hockey. I mean, we've seen a lot of people who have done AstroTurfs for football in terms of business. Yes. There are many now AstroTurfs in Nairobi, and people are flocking to those AstroTurfs.
Even that country.
Is it possible for it to be this is the man who thinks business most of the time. Do you think it would be viable to probably put up an AstroTurf hockey pitch, or could you not hire the same football AstroTurfs for hockey training? Because I remember in those good old days, when you were going to Form 1, one of the things that you are required to have was a hockey stick.
Definitely.
That was the development.
And that is actually what contributed a lot in
the
how
development.
in how the sport developed
So
in those
what has
days.
changed now?
No, the first thing that changed is that the government then actually stopped hockey, especially in primary school. So this is the reason why you find now we actually need clubs to actually anchor these academies. And we also need the county hockey associations to anchor these academies. Otherwise, the schools don't, the primary schools specifically, do not get the hockey sticks into schools. But you talked about the AstroTurf. The turf that we play hockey in is a little bit different from the one you play football.
Yes.
So if we could get some rebate of some kind, when we are bringing, even if you get second-hand AstroTurf and you bring it in, but you get a rebate, because you are taxing everything, my friend.
Right now with taxes, there's no rebate. now, even if you wanted to get married on an AstroTurf, you are still going to be taxed for the AstroTurf and for the marriage. So
this is not the best.
But you see, Bernard, if you get for example, the county governments, if the county governments can actually set aside space for hockey fields, and then eventually get AstroTurf into those fields.
We will fields, engineer. In my very unbiased opinion,
yes,
literally every university in this country has space for hockey.
Well, you have a coach here from a university.
Right? Isn't that true? The minute we ran down, the University of Nairobi has one. Yeah. I'm sure KU has one. The private universities have one, have at least. What is the difficulty? Because I remember in those days we had multi-purpose pitches. You used it for hockey. After that, somebody else used it for basketball. There was a rim over there, and everybody used it. So what's the challenge at the moment?
It's actually a matter of just moving the goalposts.
What's the challenge at the moment?
Okay, for now, I think you are right. Universities have space. Like where I am at KU, we have 2 hockey pitches. One for the men, one for the ladies. So the question that comes in, how do we get an AstroTurf to that space or to that field? So that should be the conversation. But what I've seen working elsewhere, schools have partnered with the government or maybe the county or the hockey association in that country. They put in a word, and it goes to what the engineer was saying. Tax waivers, tax rebate, in terms of bringing that second hand. I was in South Africa the other day.
It's a
developed, in that area, over 30 AstroTurf pitches. Schools, not even clubs, schools. So a good breeding ground should be schools. If you're looking at schools, of course the feeder clubs or the feeder whatever system that is, of course, feeding into the clubs is the schools. You have to rely on the kids that are coming from high school for them to get to university or to a certain club. Now, he's talked about academies. That can be an additional avenue. Now, strengthening the schools. Okay, we are not saying we must have AstroTurf in high schools. If we can have this in universities, because if you look at the league currently, a good percentage of the players are university students. A good number of the clubs. But they must have started from secondary school. Yes, they must have started at a lower level. Yes. So if you are doing any interventions, it must start from the lower level. Ken, you have something to say?
Bernard, I'm really trying to follow this conversation. I'm trying to balance myself. You know, just a few years back, 30-something years back, look at 1987. Kenya, I think, was like the African champion in hockey. Now, today, our hockey league is hardly functional. Look, we go to South Africa, and look, we can't beat Nigeria.
Yeah, but you have to look at it this way as well. 30 years ago, we were champions. 30 years later, we still have the same stadium. The hockey stadium. So I'm just trying. AstroTurf has been put on.
So I'm just trying to see what happened. Why did we not continue with the trend?
That's a good question. That's a good question to the engineer.
What did we do or what did we not do?
Why did we not do? And because again, and this saddens me, that you find Kenyan coaches coaching in other countries.
Absolutely.
The coach of Tanzania, the coach of Uganda, for example, in cricket are Kenyan. In Namibia, there's a Kenyan coach coaching there. And they're doing well. They're even beating us. Now we are using the expertise in other countries to come and beat ourselves.
Yes.
Akatsa, God rest his soul in peace, died the other day, was one of the best hockey players we ever had. There were people like Odur, there were people like, there were very many good players. But in between, what happened?
Bernard, you see, they say that failure to plan is like planning to fail. So if we don't plan our systems, then I think it would be a tall order for you to actually ask for something to come out of it. As we are saying, during those days you are talking about, people used to go, every child who was going to school, primary school, was being asked to go with a hockey stick. That stopped at some point. There needed to have been an intervention. Right now, there is another change which is coming in schools. Primary schools are changing from 844 to CBC. Yes. Now, what is CBC doing? CBC is retaining class 7, 8, and 9 in primary school. Right. Now, these are the same kids who are playing hockey in secondary schools. So what is going to happen? So we need to have an intervention right now about these kids who are being retained in primary schools. Remember, we said that kids are not going to primary schools with hockey stick, isn't it?
Yes.
So what is the solution? Academy.
Okay.
Because if you don't take them to, if we don't take them to Wazalendo Hockey Academy, will we have the young kid who is now in the university?
Okay. So I'm really controlling myself from asking you about this. Is there no framework? Is there no policy? Is there no write-up about that? I know it's not your role. It might be a federation role. But so are you partnering with the federation?
Let me tell you the thing that happened, because I was part of the group that founded Wazalendo in 1995. The Sports Act was a good thing that came, okay? But it also brought in challenges. You know, when we founded Wazalendo, we were about 10 of us. We removed money from our pockets to run the club, all right? When the Sports Act came, Sports Act said you must do elections. Now, when you're doing elections, you know, it's anybody's guess who is going to be the leader in that particular club. It may be somebody who is not even willing to remove money from their pocket to run. And yet, hockey needs money to be able to to run. So how then are you going to balance these two?
So money here becomes the root of all evil, and even the absence of it becomes the root of all evil.
Yes. So now you have that challenge that you have clubs which do not have money to be able to run them. Clubs are struggling as we are speaking. Clubs are struggling.
All right, but let's talk about the interventions.
What are we doing?
Let's talk about the interventions. Let's start from the coaching perspective and inclusive of the capacity building. What do you think should be done? I like the train of thought of partnering with the counties because they have a budget, and I think they also have a budget for sports. And maybe that is where the proposal should go. But again, I have a challenge here because I think the proposal might only be valid or have credibility if it comes from the federation. But we are not here to talk about the federation. You as an individual, can you go and ask for this budget? Can you go and do something with them? What are the interventions you're thinking about, Coach?
Yeah, for me, you mentioned some good names, as part of the legends, hockey legends. A question, when did they start playing hockey? You'll find that they started playing hockey at a very young age. So to me, that is key. We have to start training these kids to play hockey at a young age, 6, 7 years. And it's happening elsewhere. The top teams in hockey, the kids are starting hockey when they're 6, 7 years. If you go there, you will see it practically. They even have a league, a junior league. So that is something positive. But you can start from somewhere. Let's start it in primary. Or, like engineer is doing, let's have academies where these kids can start playing hockey. Now, 2, the infrastructure. They need a surface to play on. So how do we get that one in place? Of course, partnering. If the schools can get the AstroTurf, the universities, that would be a positive thing.
Okay, you're not going to run away from this question as well. What do you think Kenya needs to do to be able to win to be in the Olympics? Because they've never played in the Olympics. To play at the Olympics, for example, what does the country need? You know, because we already have a team there. So let's not talk about infrastructure.
So
we already have a team in South Africa playing, and they go to the semi-finals, which means the talent part is there. That's how they got to the semi-finals. But what else do we need beyond that to get to the Olympics?
Bernard, you see, I could not help when I was watching the ladies, especially in the semi-final against Nigeria. You see, as Coach Wandera says, until you have get used to a situation, then you will be able to know how to get out of it. Because if these people don't get to play at that level over and over and over and over, then it is very difficult. Because what happened to those girls was they got to a point, they sort of found a wall, and it's like they could not be able to go around that wall. But if you had several scenarios of that kind, for example, you go meet a team, they beat you, you go back.
You beat them.
Beat them.
And meet a team and beat them.
Yes.
Beat them and beat them again.
Yes. But you see, you have to get used to being beaten by that team as well. So you to see that you can also beat them.
I was avoiding that negative trend of it.
But you see, there is a certain level. You know, a few minutes ago you were talking about Helen.
Yeah.
Helen runs.
Okay. So
the same thing with hockey.
Yeah, it should be done over and over
at that level.
We're running out of time now. So, just your last comment, just a quick one. Just one word.
First of all,
it's a quick one. Just a quick one.
To add on what he says.
No, just
this
a quick
team,
one.
The last time they played was 2 years ago.
All right. So, what needs to be done? The last one.
Exposure.
Long-term planning.
Long-term planning. All right. That is what is one word. Right there. Look, we have to go now. I've seen your comments. The congratulatory messages are many. I'll not even be able to read them, but thank you very much for sending them in. For Helen Obiri, we'll leave you with the fixtures for the weekend to be able to know exactly what's going on and to diarize. But we thank you for your company. We'll keep these conversations going to be able to talk sports for development. And thank you to you for coming to the studio to talk to us.
Thank you very much.
Well, we'll leave you with that for now. Goodbye, and we'll see you next weekend.